Hello, I'm Kathleen Bade, and as we continue to talk to superintendents from across the country, we're going to keep it local right now. Here in California, we have Michael McCormick from Verde Unified School District. So thank you for being here.
Happy to be here. What a great opportunity, and so wonderful to meet you, and so grateful for the paper team for giving us an opportunity to share a little bit about what we're doing and who we are.
Well, tell me, who are you, Verde? For people who aren't familiar with your geography, tell us exactly where you are and also what makes your community special.
Yeah, so Michael McCormick, superintendent in the Verde Unified School District. We're located about 60 miles east of Los Angeles in the Inland Empire. So some local cities kind of nearby, Paris, Moreno Valley, Riverside. And I think what makes our community so special is the beautiful diversity amongst our families and scholars that we have. It's been really fantastic. It's where I've spent the last 27 years of my life. So when I say family, I really mean family. I was the principal of students as a middle school principal and a high school principal, and we've had several of those former students now coming back, choosing to serve in their community as teachers and counselors, support staff. So it's been a beautiful place to spend time.
Well, you must like it because you've dug your heels in, right? And you are getting ready to retire at the end of this school year. So tell me in this moment how you're feeling about that and what this profession in education has meant to you.
Oh my gosh. That just kind of threw me back a little bit. There's a part of me, it's like, am I really retiring? It's meant the world to me. And what I've told my own children and anybody else who listen is I really hope that they can find a profession that is their passion. I have loved getting up, going to work, and been blessed to do the work that I love to do for all this time being in education. And on the one hand, you get up and you go through those daily routines, but then thinking about, like, it sounds funny to say this, but like that legacy work, what is it you want to leave behind? And I think what I'm most kind of conflicted about is just this idea that, being part of shaping young students and taking that responsibility on. Let this sit with you for just a second. This year's kindergartners will graduate high school in 2036. And then I also tell the people, right, isn't that crazy? And then I also tell people, like, look, we've got 20,000 future workers sitting in Val Verde right now. And most recently, I've been thinking about large language models, generative artificial intelligence, and the impact that that's going to have on our lives. It keeps creeping in these very subtle ways. More recently, it's been these grand ways with some of the big models that are out there. And how do we prepare students now to thrive, not just survive, but to really thrive in their future and what that's going to be like? So I have absolutely been passionate and loved every minute of thinking about what do we do to prepare students for their future, not our past.
And how do you sum up how education has evolved?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun being part of some big initiatives, and I think the way things have changed is we've been, at least in my system, we've been willing to try some things differently and be a little innovative. There's this pull in education that it doesn't want to change a whole lot. It makes me think about this idea of we've been tinkering towards utopia for like 100 years. And so when I think about some of the things that we've been able to accomplish by introducing technology, changing the time structures that students are in class, liberating students to be able to communicate and collaborate with others beyond their classroom space, and by the way, liberating teachers so that they're re-engaged and excited about the content that they're teaching, and doing it with the tools of technology that allow for greater communication, collaboration and creativity. So we've got kids working with drones. We've got a vineyard. The teachers are real curious about that. Agricultural complex. We're doing cybersecurity. Just a whole host of animation and robotics. And really trying to get kids drawn into some new experiences.
So how do you take those traditional teaching methods that are needed and marry them with this new world of technology?
I think it takes a special teacher that is empowered to do the things that they would like to do, coupled with, we call it the art and science of teaching. The artistry is looking for new and innovative and engaging ways to interact with students. The science of it really goes back to the teacher understanding, what are the big ideas? What are the themes in terms of their content? And how do they kind of masterfully weave those things together so that they are getting the coverage of the content that they need? We've kind of inherited these, what I call legacy accountability systems at the state and federal government levels, where we still need to have one foot firmly in that kind of legacy accountability system. And at the same time, we really want to be innovative and engage our students and help them find what they're passionate about. And we know that learning is kind of inherently a social experience. So while we use technology, we know that there's nothing that replaces a high quality teacher.
And how do you recruit those high quality teachers? How do you keep the teachers that you have?
Yeah, and that's something I think is a national conversation. I think that over the years that I've been in Verde, we've done a really good job of giving teachers, voice and choice. And I think the adults in the system want to be seen, heard, and valued. And when you create mechanisms where people feel like their voice counts, they have a seat at the table. We have excellent relationships with our employee association. When you do those things, word spread. And people have friends that are teaching in other districts or relatives and things like that. They say, hey, in Val Verde, we're doing these things. What are you doing in your district? I think between the reputation that we've been able to build for the kinds of things we're doing, and then we have so many students that want to come back and be teachers in the system. We call them the OGs because they've actually walked in the shoes of our students.
Well, tell me, when you brought up innovations, what are some of the initiatives or programs that you've launched to allow those to happen?
Yeah, I think, like a lot of districts back in 2015, 2016, we were transitioning to one-to-one technology. So every one of our kids gets their own laptop, and I'm talking kindergarten all the way to the adults in the system. We did something else to try to control costs for our internet bandwidth and capacity, and installed a dark fiber network with some great partners, Cisco, that helped us with that. And as a result of doing some of these things to build the infrastructure, I think where a lot of districts went wrong is they added the devices and didn't spend the time and the investment to get the infrastructure in place to support all these added devices. So I'm really proud of our IT team, fantastic folks who really thought carefully about building out the infrastructure, then adding devices. We're working with a device today that is based in artificial intelligence. So it works a lot like your home Alexa or Google Assistant. A teacher can say, bring up this PowerPoint, share this PowerPoint to Google Classroom, create an assessment. And the teacher is walking around with a voice command remote control. And it's really liberated the teachers away from their desks and the front of the classroom so that they could be completely mobile, operate the technology tools in their classroom, but also turn that technology over to students so they can ask it questions and get answers. So those are the kinds of fun things that we've been able to do that I think might, for the first time, actually be making the teacher's job easier.
Yeah, and they have so much on their plate these days. It's almost like Alexa could become a teacher's assistant in a different way.
That's right. That's exactly the concept, is to be able to use the voice to control things just like you would in a home environment. But this is a system that's been built from the ground up to be safe for kids in terms of their personal information and also the content. It's not like a large language model like ChatGPT that has the entire internet as its resource. This is built with content pre-plugged into it that is education specific.
And you would recommend that to other districts?
100%. The teachers that have it are loving it. Our goal is to implement that in all 950 classrooms in our district.
Well, as you know, nothing in education happens without funding. The expiration of the pandemic funds has been an issue across the country. How are you managing that?
Yeah, we're having to right-size our budget just like everybody else. And that's not easy because we're a people business. And so most of the salaries that we have, I mean, it's not like we're making a product per se where we can cut back on the assembly line and maybe look for, cheaper ways to do things. And so it's a difficult time. You've got federal, COVID dollars is kind of drying up. We're still working with horrible attendance problems and getting kids to come back to school after the pandemic. A lot of kids just vanished. We don't know where they were, so we're really working to, create an environment where kids want to be every day and parents want to send their students every day. So I think some of the things that we've looked to do is certainly make cuts as far away from the classroom and keep them happy so that we have retention. It cuts down on the churn because every time you bring somebody new in, there's cost associated. So I'm not saying that we have the magic bullet here, but I think by having good consistency of leadership and excellent programs, it does make a difference.
Well, as you're getting ready to pass the baton to someone else to be superintendent, what is your advice of some of the lessons learned along the way, the mistakes made or things that you felt were successful? What would you share?
Yeah, I love the way you phrase that. It's like, I feel like I've run my leg of the race and now it's time to pass the baton to the next person to, carry on that work. I've had a lot of failures. I'm like the king of half-baked ideas, right?
I love that.
And it all made sense in my brain, but my ability to be able to, articulate these thoughts and ideas in a clear and concise way has been a challenge. And fortunately, I have people around me that are real deep systems thinkers who have been able to help me with visuals. I think one of the things I've learned is there's so many things coming at us in education. If we can have something that sits on one page, if we can have some good visuals that go along with that, it helps people get that mental model or paint that picture. Hey, this is what we're trying to do. By far, one of the most successful things we've done is came up with an initiative around portrait of a graduate. We got together the business community, the parents, the students, all the educators and said, what is it that we want for our children when they leave Verde? And it came down to communication, collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, and flexibility. And with those 5 things, obviously, kids need to be able to know how to read and do math and understand the world around them through science and social studies. But we think those are the skills and dispositions that are going to take kids into their futures. We know a lot of businesses, they want creative problem solvers. They want people that know how to come to work on time. And they also want people to work on diverse teams. So these are the things that I would love to see the next superintendent in Verde continue with that portrait of a graduate. It's really served as our North Star. And the other thing I would say to a new superintendent is you can't do this work alone. You've got to have great partners like Paper and others because it's too big of a job. And so I've really enjoyed looking for those strategic partners. It's what I say, the first step in co-creation is vulnerability. And so do we have those partners that are willing to be vulnerable with us? Are we willing to be vulnerable to come up with some really creative and solid solutions?
It almost sounds like you're saying don't be afraid to take some risks.
Don't be afraid to take some risks. I think, you know what? Our kids deserve it. and they can't wait. I would say, don't be squarely in the middle of the pack, and certainly don't be at the back of the pack. Be willing to take some calculated risks.
And as you look ahead to 2024 specifically, and I'm sure you have a lot of emotions wrapped up in that for yourself, but what do you think the outlook for education is?
I'm a little afraid, but I'll remain hopeful. As budgets constrain, I think that our ability to be innovative and put money into research and development, everything gets constrained. So the hopeful side of me is, post-COVID, coming out of the pandemic, we got lots of stuff. And now I think school districts would be moving into a period where they're going to have to be very clear about what are their key priorities, because that's what is going to take them to the next phase. And I think with shrinking budgets, they're also going to have to be very clear about what they can support financially and with their existing human capital. So I think you'll see districts go through a process of what I like to call strategic abandonment.
Well, as superintendent, you're kind of at 33,000 feet overlooking all of the schools, but you've also been a principal and assistant principal on the front lines on the ground. What have you learned from those roles that you use for how you lead the district and your leadership philosophy?
I think for me, even as I was an elementary school teacher, so I've kind of worked at all levels, and for me, it's always come back down to relationships. When I was a teacher, it was about relationships, and they call it capturing kids' hearts. You capture their heart, you can capture their mind. And I think it's the same thing that holds true with adults in the system. And building these relationships with people over the years, it's like I can walk in the morning and say, how's your work going? Or I can walk in the morning and say, how's the family? How's the kids? Which conversation is somebody likely to remember 20 years later? It was, I'm willing to invest time with you, get to know who you are as a human being, and what brought you into the business. That to me is what has always carried the day. And I think, frankly, that's what I'm going to miss the most is been almost 30 years in with a community that I love dearly.
What do you think are the greatest needs of your community in Verde?
I say it like this. There's smart kids everywhere. There's talent all over the place. What is not always present is opportunity and access. And I think if you give kids opportunity and provide them access, the sky's the limit. And so one of the things I've always been very passionate about is, look, my kids in Verde, once they leave us, they've got to be able to compete with kids potentially from all over the globe. Why should my kids in Verde get anything less than anybody else has got? And by the way, how can we stack the deck in their favor? And so I just firmly believe that there's really incredible kids sitting in all of our school districts across the nation.
And you called them my kids.
Yeah.
So that is spoken as someone who's really invested in them. And obviously it's made an impression on your own kids because they both went into education.
Yeah, they swore to me, Dad will never go into education. When I was a high school principal, I used to drag them to band competitions and football games and, theater performances. And they're like, this is too much. One of them's a kindergarten teacher and the other one's a high school counselor. So
sold.
I tell people I'm not tempting fate, but I can die a happy man.
Well, and I don't want to get you too misty, but what are your parting words for people who might be looking at the education profession and thinking, it's too much of an uphill battle these days?
Yeah, it is an uphill battle, but I think that there's so much work yet to be done. And there's a lot of change. There's a lot of opportunity for continued change or transformation. It's interesting when we think about all the industry sectors, things have changed over time in just about every other profession. And it's like we're still kind of doing the same thing the same way. but expecting different outcomes. And it doesn't happen that way. So I would say, be courageous. Our kids deserve it. Be willing to try something different. We owe it to kids. And, if we're going to continue to keep pace with what's happening around the world, our biggest investment has to be in our scholars, our young kids, to set them up for success. And what I like to say is, I'm getting older. The people of my generation have had a really hard time solving some of these intractable challenges that we face. I'm counting on the next generation to step up and solve those problems to make the world a better place.
Well, it sounds like listening to you, this has been 33 years well spent. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Well, and to all the kids that obviously benefited from all your hard work. So thank you, Michael McCormick, for joining us. We sure appreciate it.